Hey, what's up, you beautiful people? Welcome back to this podcast, the Dungeon Crawl thingamawhatsit. I meant to record this earlier. This was planned, and I wanted this to go out, I don't know, Sunday-ish, like I did for the last episode. But some things had come up. Actually, if you remember, if you listened to the last episode, my audio was not the best thing in the world. My mixer actually completely died. About, I don't know, an hour after recording that podcast. Like literally it would start up. It'd just be a completely loud noise. I think the power supply was broken. Doesn't matter. Point is, wasn't working. Had to order a whole new one. Well, then if you're in the news, the whole southern part of the United States, mainly Texas area, actually now it's hitting the northeastern area. It's a big ice storm that kind of went around, snow and whatnot, and so that kind of slowed down you probably can't hear it. Maybe you can't, but my cat JD is screaming. But kind of slowed down the parcels, the mail to get to me. I don't know why I'm saying parcels like it's fucking Harry Potter over here. But so slow things down, right? So I finally got it here. Some other things come up, but finally here we are. I can't record it earlier in the week because I got class, and I'm now working at a rehab counseling inpatient facility. So busy, right? But here we are, finally to record this episode, and it's gonna be a very positive episode, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word. That's the word I'm looking for here. But I ran into his Reddit post, which I was going to link it, but it's been a few days. I don't know if I saved the link. But you can easily find it if you go to, I believe it was on the DM Academy subreddit. I saw it it's called DMs, What Makes You Happy / Keeps You Going. By the username, that person that made this was called Tofurky, which is a fantastic username. Shout out to Tofurky. But I saw this and I started thinking about myself. Why do I love being a DM? What keeps me going? What makes me happy as a dungeon master? What pushes me through the anxiety, the imposter syndrome, and all that other fun stuff that gets into your head as a DM? That's showing us, just like anything creative. If you show it to other people, you're going to have all those thoughts swimming in the back of your mind, like, oh my God, this looks terrible. I hate this. This is shit. This is crap. No one else should see this. This should not see the light of day. Yet, as DMs, we get immediate feedback from our players. We'll take them to a tavern that we spent ages on. We create the entire family tree of the innkeep. And this is why the family was passed down from generation to generation. His wife was killed in a goblin attack or, whatever. We spend hours on creating plot lines, quests that come off from this tavern, and we show it to the players, and immediately we'll see their reaction. They're either going to love it and bite on to every word that this poor tavern keep is talking about his wife, or they're just going to immediately turn around and say, you know what? Let's just stay across the street. Let's just forget the tavern. Let's just keep walking, and we'll sleep on the road. And boom, you just gotta, as a DM, you gotta take that sheet of paper, or sheets of paper that you worked painstakingly hard on, and just toss them out the window. Trust me, we've all been there. So with that in mind, what then keeps you going as a DM? Please, before I speak anything, fellow DMs out there, comment below. If you're on YouTube, that is. If you're not on YouTube, then hop in the Discord or whatever and type why you love being a DM. Tell me. Because I'm going to tell you my thoughts, but I'm also going to pull from some of the other lovely commenters on this Reddit post that also said some stuff. We're going to start with your boy Kevo, or Kivo, your boy Kivo. Your boy Kivo said, as a DM, I'm always eager when I don't have to say a single fucking word. Imagine it stopped right there. I just don't want to fucking talk as a DM. And the characters just talk with each other. By characters, they're referring to the players, obviously. And I would have to completely concur with this statement. That's absolutely one of my favorite moments of being a DM. I mean, this has a lot to do with party cohesion, right? I mean, there's only so much you can do as a DM. You can create this wonderful world as yourself, but if the party's not cohesive, if people aren't getting along or whatever, then you're not going to have these moments regardless. So you got to keep that in mind. But if you combine a good party, good group of people, good group of players, friends, what have you, with this cool world and story that you've built together collaboratively, it can create some beautiful moments where you as a DM can just sit your ass back. I saw someone, I think, replied to one of these comments saying that they love these moments because they're a painter or something. They paint minis for hire, which sounds like an incredible job to do. I can't paint minis for crap. But they say whenever this happens, they'll just continue painting a mini and decide to sit back and relax. I will sit back and listen to, and I'll hang on every single word the players are saying. I'll just listen in, kind of keep that in mind and keep with like sometimes, they'll be theorizing about certain things. And I'll be like, what, that's a way better idea than what I had in mind. I'm going to take that and run with it a little bit farther. But some of my favorite sessions can be full RP and that means no combat the entire session. And that's obviously only if everyone's all right with it. Some people want combat, and obviously you got to have a good balance unless you like, let's just play. If you just want to have a role play, then maybe don't play D&D, play improv. I mean, you don't need to have dice to improv with your friends. You can, but if you gotta have some combat, right? But some of my most memorable moments as a DM are during these types of sessions. I'm a sucker for some good RP, so I'll just sit back, relax, and pop in some popcorn as I'm listening to what these players are telling each other. And I think it's important as a DM to give this is an option. I mean, because a lot of new players won't think that you can just not listen to the DM for the quote unquote leader for hours on end. Maybe not hours, but 10, 15, 20 minutes. So don't be afraid as a DM to give the players the space. I used the example of a tavern earlier. Continuing with that, give the players at the time, if they're in a tavern, say, hey, I'm going to sit back for a minute. Maybe don't say I'm going to sit back for a minute, but say something like along the lines of, so what do you guys want to do now? Or have them order food. And obviously, if you're ordering food, you're not just going to leave and fuck off and go do something else. So in the medium, let that be a timeline for the players to just interact amongst themselves. The bar keeps running back to make some porridge. Okay, obviously it takes longer than probably 10 to 15 minutes to make some nice porridge, but you can truncate that. And once the conversation starts to lull down, boom, porridge is here. Something like that. And you may need to prompt this early on. So you may specifically have to say, hey, here's some, have some time amongst yourselves. Something like that. Travel sessions can be great for this. You're all sitting on horses or walking together. Your feet are going to get sore. You're all sitting on a carriage. Just chat, talk amongst each other. I've had some incredible moments with my players when they're doing this. Sometimes there's an NPC along, and I always feel like I'm intruding as the NPC because I'm just kind of sitting there, quote unquote, as the NPC. And then sometimes I'll butt in and say a couple of words. But for the most part, I'm even quiet as an NPC, even if I know I'm there. With that said, though, so my cat's jumping around. I just got home, so my cat's like, oh my God, my human is home. But in that same vein, I think there's a time and a place, and even more than that, I think there's a time, like you as the DM, again, you're the leader, so you need to know when the RP has kind of run its course, when it's time to start wrapping it up or cut it off if need be. If you can see some of the players starting to check out, if some people aren't as invested, obviously, if there's two people super invested talking amongst each other, let them have that moment, let them enjoy each other for a little bit, and then hop over and say, all right, then the barkeep comes back. Or if you see a lull, you can jump in and say, all right, so we'll head to the next day. Something along those lines. Make it a little bit more, make it a little nicer and enjoyable than that. Not just say, hey, we're going to jump to the next day now. I love these types of moments, and they're definitely one of the many things that keep me going as a DM. All right, now we got Sir Susurrus. Incredible usernames. I really recommend talking about the game right after a session. Getting feedback and hearing people just talk about their favorite parts is way better than just playing until everyone has to leave. Then everyone is suddenly gone and you are alone after the game. So plan in a few extra minutes for that. They go on to say another paragraph. I'll add on to that in a minute. And I completely agree that talking to your players and getting feedback after sessions and in between. Don't forget about you have time in between sessions. I know we're all busy people. Sometimes it's important to reach out to your player and say, hey, I noticed during this moment you didn't seem to be having a fun time. Is everything okay? Is there something I can be doing as a better DM? And then there's oftentimes the player will say, oh no, you're doing a great job, yada yada was going on. Or they'll say, yeah, I actually didn't really enjoy X, Y, and Z, or this didn't seem like a moment for me to jump in at. Oh, okay, you can talk about that and work things out and have a better experience for everybody as a whole. But it's also a good process for me as a DM to know if I'm doing a good job. Sometimes we as DMs need to hear these things. It not only gets good information about what your players think immediately after session, especially if you're talking about it afterwards, which I definitely recommend. I think that's a lot of fun to just hang out afterwards and chat amongst each other. You do this beforehand as well, but afterwards you can immediately talk about, hey, that was sick that you rolled a natural 20 to save my life right there. Hell yeah. Good job, Jack. Something like that. Like I said, this also gives you a nice ego boost as a DM. The opposite if someone says they hated it. I would be careful because I've had this happen, and I wouldn't say get overly in your head or overly secretive about certain things because it's fun to keep things secret. Or I guess let me say the point first and then I'll go deeper into it. But be careful about pulling the curtain out behind reveals and ideas that you make during session, during these after session chats. Because it can make the world seem smaller or not as cool if like, oh yeah, I saw this was happening, so I decided to do this instead. Like, oh, okay. I mean, the player sometimes might like, oh, it's not pre-written. You're jumping along and changing as we do stuff as well, which can be very cool. And that's why I say don't get too caught up in your head about this, because I could easily see DMs be like, oh, I'm not gonna say a word afterwards. I will tell my players certain things like, oh yeah, the boss was at 1 HP there for like 5 rounds. You guys just couldn't hit him. He was ready to die. Stuff like that. Fun little comments here and there. Occasionally, after things have been run its course, like I had quest lines from years ago that never went anywhere, and I had a player like, hey, whatever happened to those mines that we didn't go into? I say, oh yeah, if you guys had gone in there, you might have experienced this. Might have. And I'll always allude to, there's probably, if you were to go back now, it's probably different. You can go check it out if you're interested. But that's what was going on back then. It's just, fun conversations. And then Sir Susurrus goes on to say, little moments during the game give me a lot of motivation too. Mostly when my players interact with my world building and build upon it. Yes-anding. If you guys don't know what yes-anding is, yes-and it's an improv term, which basically means instead of shutting down someone's improv who brings something to the table like, I saw you at Aunt Jackie's last week. What were you doing there? Instead of saying, no, I wasn't there, which immediately shuts down all the improv, you would say, oh yeah, I was there and we talked about turkey. I mean, it's kind of boring improv, but that's adding to the story. So you're not just shutting everything down. You're taking what the other person said, kind of shaking their hand and saying, all right, I'm going to add this on and toss it back at you. And it's kind of a game you can play back and forth with each other. And they continue to say, also the moment when a player figures out the clue you gave them 5 sessions ago is very rewarding to me. I love a good yes and. I mean, it doesn't tend to happen a lot with my players. I think because so many of them are worried about about improv world building, period, because I think they're scared, nervous, tentative to ruin or hurt the world building that I've already created. Like they think it'll contradict something that I've created. Little do they know, and hey, maybe some of them are listening here, little do they know that I do a lot of improv world building at the table and will extend on it later. Like something will come up that I could not in my wildest imagination have thought of before the game. The player asks a question and I'm like, oh, I'd never have thought about that. That's a great question. And so I'll come up with it on the fly, something that I feel like would make sense. I'll quickly jot it down. And I kind of understand in their defense, they would think, okay, but you know the world better than I do. You know what would fit. Well, again, little do they probably know, I really love all of their ideas. And I'm very happy when I see them interacting with the game in this way and putting their heart into it, or putting their stories deeper into the game and adding things on. And again, kind of like, yes, and okay, you have this cool city here. Okay, well, I know a friend. I have a friend that lives here. I mean, I hate to use that example because I'm sure a lot of us know the D&D horror stories of, oh yeah, I got a friend here. He's got the highest level gear in the game. Let's just go stop over and get all of this stuff. But I mean more in the lines of, oh, I know someone here. So then they tell me who this person is, or they create it on the fly, and then I can put that person in later, or they can meet them later in that session. That makes me as a DM, I mean, it takes some sweat off my back having to create the entire world. I can get a little back and forth, which I always now, whenever I start new games, I always ask my players, hey, give me 3 NPCs that you know in the world, just as a starting point, just to get them interested. And I can then use these NPCs in ways to interact with them and bring them into the game. I would recommend not taking these NPCs they give you and just slaughter them and kill them. You might do that later, far down the line, but I would not do that pretty early on, because that seems rather harsh. All right, so then Tofurky, the person that created this Reddit post, made a comment as well. To give my personal, more in-depth take on what keeps me going, it's having that one player who is truly invested in it. The player that's got their nose in the threads you lay, asks the questions you, as a DM, spent hours to create an answer for, or is so colorful with their characters they feel truly flesh and blood, not as a main character, as a team member. I haven't had a truly problem player, but I sure as shit have at least 2 all-star players that I would love to have as players at every table I DM for you. Shout out to those 2 all-star players that Tofurky's referring to. But for me, this was a player that I had that took extensive. I mean, let me clarify this now. I adore and love every single one of my players, but specifically to relate to what Tofurky is talking about, I had a player who would take extensive notes. And when I mean extensive, I mean extensive. It was a gigantic PDF document that had what happened in sessions, and it was session 1, session 2, session 3, that kind of stuff. Then he had a separate document that had all the characters that the players had encountered, where they had encountered them at, where they were probably located at, what happened when they met that character, like what the encounter was like. And then they had a whole third document that was all locations. So it was like this city, Ravenfall, has this grouping of characters added. Or, I mean, like I said, it was very, very extensive notes. And he would share them with us very haphazardly. He would share the session notes immediately. Like this happened on session 61. That's the session we just did. He'd send that pretty much immediately. But he'd send the rest of those notes haphazardly occasionally and say, oh, I haven't said this in a while. Here's an update. And I would adore just scrolling through the document, go, oh my God, yeah, I completely forgot about this guy. Oh yeah, they met this guy a long time ago. Did I even write that guy down in my notes? 9 times out of 10, I probably didn't. And so this would help me out a lot as a DM to remember to bring these things back up. But I would get so excited just looking through this, knowing that someone cares enough to take these types of notes about something that I created. Only inspired me to create more interesting and increasingly in-depth world for them to explore and write down. And kind of like that Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme where it has Charlie like with all the lines on a map. That's kind of what it looked like. That it was like, oh my God, all these things are connected together. He actually ended up making one of those. It was like these plot threads. I think actually the character made this too and showed this to the players. Like, hey, so everything's kind of connected here. It looks like, circle. This guy's the most important thing we should be paying attention to right now. That made me so happy, and I love stuff like that. But I'll also say I also love the players who ask questions outside of session and in session that give you different ideas or point you into certain directions that you haven't thought of before. Just kind of like if you read like a prompt generator or something when you're writing, it's like, oh, I never thought about that. It just kind of gives you a different perspective, and it's fun to world build collaboratively with people. All right, so now we got Bandette Trash Panda. As a newer player, is there anything I can do to not become the problem player and keep everyone having fun? I feel like I'm always asking questions. I had to ask my DM to let me change a couple of things about my character because I didn't fully understand it all. I feel like I'm a problem already. Now, I think this is a very common, now this doesn't really tie into the rest of the stuff here, so I probably should have put it last. But I think it's a very common misconception, which is why I wanted to include it. I know many new players that are very nervous to play, to even start D&D, let alone tabletop RPGs in general, for similar reasons to this. Let me tell you, as a DM and when I'm a player, I love when people are new and ask questions. It shows that they're willing to learn, that they want to get better at this. They want to understand what's happening and how to be, how to contribute to the game. It's extremely a valuable trait to have in a group and in a player, to have that want to learn, and will only increase your and your group's enjoyment of the game. To put in the effort, and to, obviously I think you have to put in the effort and try to retain the information instead of just asking questions every single time. You never learn what your ability does. That can be frustrating to the rest of your group. But if it's, first 5, maybe even 10 times, you're still grasping and you're trying, and the people can tell you're trying and putting in the effort. That's the most important thing here. Just pay attention, soak in what the others are doing, ask questions when you feel like you need to. And I've never seen this as being a problem player or being an issue. With that said, though, it's probably important to play with people that are aware and happy to play with someone who's new. Not everyone is, sadly. I think that's a terrible thing, because you're not excited to play with somebody that's new. If you don't want to have new people in your game, then you're the problem player. Boom. Mic drop. And I'll tell you why you're the problem player. You're the problem player because 10, 15 years time, you're going to be the same person that's saying, how come no one's playing D&D anymore? How come no one wants to play with me? Well, where is everybody? No one's playing D&D. Everyone's playing this new system or something. No one's playing D&D anymore because you never wanted to play with anybody new. You never wanted to teach anybody how to play. So they said, well, okay, well, fuck it. I don't want to play with you. I don't want to play at all anymore. Thanks, asshole. So you're the problem player. Boom. All right, now we got Mr. Snowplow. Oh, sorry. No, it's either Mrs. Nowplow or Mr. Snowplow. I will leave you to decide exactly what that means, or what that is. People talking about the game outside of D&D time is what makes me happy. We already kind of talked about that. The fact that a few players came up with a plan over their lunch break for the game that night was really great. I like to know that the people I play with are interested and having as much fun as me. And I completely agree. We already talked about this a little bit, but specifically, what makes me happy is whenever I hang out with people that I play D&D with outside of D&D. I know it's unheard of. And we, and specifically them, talk about events that have happened in the game like they're real stories, like that they actually happened to us and we actually experienced these things, which in a way we did, right? We weren't swinging the sword at the kobold, but we felt like we were swinging the sword at the kobold, and that's what matters. But it also makes me laugh just seeing the faces of the people around us. Like we're eating outside at like Olive Garden or something. We're eating at some restaurant, and the waiter comes by whenever we're talking about some crazy adventure that we took. I can just imagine them, heading back after giving us our salad and thinking what the hell we're experiencing, and that they might want to be included as well. Sorry, I got an email about a Black Flag update. Quick sidebar, if you guys know about Black Flag, it is Kobold Press's new tabletop RPG. We talked about it a little bit last week. Their playtest is coming out pretty soon, it seems like. So if you want to get involved with the playtest packet for Kobold Press's new tabletop RPG, Black Flag, go ahead over to the website and get signed up. It seems like it's about to come. They just sending out some things they're going to want for you if you sign up. So now to conclude us for this episode, what keeps me going? Like if I were to make a comment on this Reddit post, which I didn't, maybe I could have, what would I have said? Well, I feel like I speak for a lot of DMs out there, and maybe not. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself, and that's all I can really do, speak for myself. Is that I was a wannabe fantasy author since the age of 13 or so, maybe earlier. The stories that I wrote were pretty branching, expansive, wondrous, ambitious, but most of all, not very good. No, not at all. I still have one of my stories somewhere, and I read it a while back. Whew. Cool ideas. But man, that's a bitch to read. So if I were, actually, now I think about it, if I were to edit it up, maybe I could release it as a book. But they were enjoyable, and that's what matters most. And they were a beautiful reprieve from the real surrounding world around me. As a teen beginning to deal with these depressive thoughts. We've kind of talked about mental health on the podcast before. But so this is a good way for me to escape from mental health and the real world, and to just write fun stories and delve into fantasy reading as well. So what I love about being as a DM is taking these ambitious, ridiculous, I already said ambitious, wondrous, expansive stories, and tossing them into a collaborative, like tossing them literally in front of somebody and seeing what they do with it. I mean, how much fun is that? It's like a choose your own adventure story, but not shit. Well, sometimes it's shit, but it's always fun. And that's what matters. It's always fun. See, I mean, having other people expand, I guess the collaborative storytelling experience is, to me, the most fun experience, most enjoyable part of D&D, period. It's the closest experience that I could imagine what a writing room would look like for like a fantasy book, or a fantasy show or something along those lines. There's just something inspiring and very exciting about this form of storytelling for me. And it's so unique to the tabletop RPG landscape. And I would expand even from just tabletop RPG landscape to just collaborative storytelling, improv storytelling with friends, period. I also really love when players work through their own stuff, oftentimes without realizing it, through their characters' actions and how they respond to certain events in the story. And what I mean by stuff is, I guess I should say, for those of you who don't know, I'm a counselor, a therapist, and I'm very close, cross my fingers, everyone have me in your thoughts, to getting my license soon. So I should be fully licensed as a counselor very shortly. It's been a fun journey. And so by stuff, I mean things along those lines. Obviously, we're not doing therapy at D&D, but no matter what, if you got shit in your life, if you have trauma, if things have happened to you, you're dealing with depression, you're dealing with identity issues, these things will come out in a collaborative improv storytelling experience because you're pulling from your own experience, only from your own life, from your own experiences, from your brain. I mean, that's the only thing you can pull from. Well, maybe history, but you're still, I mean, it's still, when it comes out from your character, sure, you're playing a character, but you're going to inspire it in some way. I mean, look at actors. That's what actors do. They when they cry on camera, sometimes they're pulling it from the characters that they're playing, but oftentimes they're pulling it from a real event in their own life. Like, this is when I was sad. I'm going to think about that moment, that kind of stuff. And so it influences what happens in game. And so I really love watching that happen at the table. I mean, like I said, we're not doing therapy, but you can still work things out together, and oftentimes subconsciously, without even trying, it'll come out. In the future, not with my home game, obviously that would be very unethical. I would love to explore the idea of tabletop RPGs and counseling more seriously, because I do think the opportunity exists for there to be like a group counseling experience in a tabletop setting. I think that'd be very, very cool if you can get everyone to buy into the experience. That'd be a lot of fun. There's a book coming out. Was another book called Existential Dragons. I don't have the author on hand, but you can search it up and find it. I haven't been able to read it, sadly. But there's another book that I have bought that should be coming shortly. I'll probably talk about it on the podcast when it comes. I'd love to actually talk to the author. It's called Tabletop Role-Playing Therapy, a guide for the clinician game master. And it's by Megan A. Connell. I love that idea. It seems very cool. I'm excited to give it a deeper look. But overall, I just love seeing the players grow through the game and become more comfortable with themselves. This is also something that I do as a DM, oftentimes subconsciously, again, but sometimes consciously. I'll write stories or characters that embody traits or things I'm struggling with, and use the game to get closer to that, or like I said, subconsciously work things out. I wouldn't recommend going in with the idea, you know what, I'm going to use this as a way for me to get my shit out and I'm going to see what the players do with it. Probably not what I would say you should do to your players. But again, subconsciously, stories like that might come out. I already kind of talked about other things, so you get the gist of what I love being a DM. I enjoy it more than being a player by far. I've been a player a few times, and just something about DMing that tickles my fancy. We always say that there's a DM drought out there. That's hard to find people to run games for people, and I understand that it can be daunting and scary and anxiety inducing. I mean, it is all those things and more. But most of all, it's fun. It's enjoyable. It's rewarding, I would say, to put in all this effort and to see the fruits of your labor, of people around you having fun, of you having fun and getting closer with yourselves and each other. To me, that's the most beautiful experience in the world. I don't think I'll ever be able to recreate that outside of this space. Something else I want to talk about in closing is that I believe it's still up. I sure hope so. I had added this on last week. Let me double check. I probably should have checked before I started recording. Do you guys have a link for it or no? Or there it is. Okay. Yeah. So Paizo is currently doing a Pathfinder 2e Humble Bundle. It's called So You Want to Try Out Pathfinder. It is a 28 item bundle for $25. And that's a lot of stuff that you get. A lot of PDFs, a lot of incredible content. I mean, go back and listen to the episode that was last week, but Pathfinder or Paizo is just jumping on board here, and they've already sold 61,000 bundles. So go join the Pathfinder community. Very helpful, very nice people that I've interacted with on the Pathfinder community. So definitely check it out if you're sick of D&D or if you just want to try a different experience. And you can also be they're called game masters, not DMs over there. So I mean, everything I said about being a DM, transfer that to being a GM as well. I would also say rate the podcast 5 stars on Apple Podcasts if you enjoy what you're listening to. Go subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, youtube.com. Type in the Dungeon Crawl Podcast. I'm sure you'll be able to locate it. Join the Discord. It's all in the link below. That's all I got for this week. I'm trying to make stuff every so often. I don't know if it'll be consistent. I don't know when things will come out, but when they do, I hope you listen to it. I hope you enjoy it. See you next time.